Well, I thought there would be a May election because I thought it would either be a general election or a Tory leadership election. And frankly, looking at the newspapers today, it does suggest we're heading for some sort of Tory leadership challenge. It's absolute chaos, isn't it? We've had, in the last 10 days, Rishi Sunak unveil a unfunded £46 billion bombshell, which could put the state pension as we know it at risk. He's being bankrolled by £10 million from a racist and refuses to hand that money back. You've got Tory MPs plotting, and this is just no longer in the national interest, what is happening here. I think the responsible thing for Rishi Sunak to do now is to stabilise the situation, stop pandering to his backbenchers. That's not in the interest of the British people. Name the date of that general election. Otherwise, I fear we're going to see a Tory leadership election. We need stability. Frankly, the British people deserve better than this chaos that is unfolding before our eyes in the Tory party.
As an opposition politician, who would you rather face, a Tory party led by Rishi Sunak or led by Penny Mordaunt?
I'm not going to accept your invitation. Look, we are ready to take on whichever Tory leader. But look, I mean, we've been I've been around for a while now, haven't we? I mean, can you really believe that we're talking about, what would this be? Johnson, Truss, Sunak, the fourth Tory Prime Minister in a parliament, and it is staggering how chaotic this is. It's why I say, in the national interest, they need to stabilise the situation urgently. Otherwise, we're going to have another Tory leadership election, and name the date of a general election. Can this really go on? This discredited government really continue like this for another 6 or 7 months? It just beggars belief.
I know you're going to say that the inquiry is underway and you can't comment, so please don't say that. I'm just going to ask you personally, bearing in mind that we've had views expressed by Angela Rayner, by Harriet Harman and others in the party that they would like to see the whip restored to Diane Abbott. Would you like to see the whip restored to Diane Abbott?
Well, I know you've asked me not to give the answer that I have been giving on every other news channel this morning, but I'm afraid that is my answer. This is an independent process. The reason I say that is not to dodge your perfectly legitimate question. It's because I have served on the National Executive. I don't at the moment. I know how these inquiries often proceed, and it's fair, not just for this inquiry, but all the other inquiries that the independent process looks into. It's fair. It's only fair on complainants, people who are being investigated, that they are not these inquiries are not pressured by politicians trying to push it one way or the other. So I know I totally understand that would be a frustrating answer for you and the listener, but I'm afraid it is an independent inquiry. That's what I'm going to say.
It does imply that you think that Angela Rayner and Harriet Harman were wrong to express a view.
Well, I'm not going to comment on my, on that. I just think, from my point of view, it's an independent inquiry, and I think it's only fair that these independent inquiries should take their course. What I do want to say, though, I mean...
Carry on, sorry.
So go on, Adam.
No, you carry on.
I was just wanted to say, and I do think this is important, though, and I cannot imagine what Diane has been through this week. She gets the most abuse of any parliamentarian anyway. To open up the newspapers and read that this Conservative donor was racist and reprehensible, quite disgusting remarks about it, and talking about wanting to shoot her. I mean, we've got to remember we've had 2 of our parliamentary colleagues have been murdered in recent years. I mean, I cannot imagine what she has gone through this week, and it just staggers me that the Conservatives took so long to both recognise and acknowledge the racism and are still refusing to repay the money.
Speaking of taking a long time, why has it taken so much longer to look into Diane Abbott's case than that of Andy MacDonald or others in the party?
Well, the honest answer is I don't know, because it's an independent process, and I don't know what discussions have gone on within that particular case. But if it's an independent process, then senior politicians such as myself would not be receiving a running commentary from the inquiry. I
mean, after the way Diane Abbott's been treated this week by the Speaker, amongst others, this needs to be resolved quickly, doesn't it?
Well, on all of these different investigations that go on, of course I would like to see them proceed and be concluded in a timely fashion, absolutely.
I want to turn to some of your own policies, because you're obviously here talking about the Conservatives' uncosted spending. There is a report about trying to decarbonise the energy system, which is something that Labour has signed up to. A suggestion from the National Grid that it will take £60 billion of investment in new offshore wind farms alone to hit the government's target to decarbonise by 2035. Now, yours is even, you want to get there 5 years earlier. Are you signed up to that level of spending on offshore wind?
Well, I've not seen a particular report, and you'll have seen the levels of investment that we have announced to decarbonise, but also to invest in fitting homes so that they are warm, so they can bring their energy bills down. And how
you've scrapped your plan to spend £28 billion. You've scrapped your plan to spend £28 billion.
But well, because of the state of the public finances.
So what are you planning to spend to meet that target? Because it's a very difficult target to meet.
We're extending. These are ambitious targets, but we're ambitious for the country and the British people because we believe we can create good, well-paid quality jobs and cut people's energy bills for good by our plans. But of course, it's not just about the investment, important though that is. It's about significant reforms. It's about reforms to the planning process so we can actually connect onshore wind to the grid. Too often, planning gets opposed and stuck in the mud, and Conservative MPs have refused to take the necessary action to allow planning reform. One of the big things that we are prepared to do is reform planning so we can build houses, but also so we can connect future energy sources to the grid to meet our targets on decarbonisation.
But just to be very clear for people, I mean, National Grid is saying it's going to cost £60 billion just for that part of investment, and that's to get it to 2035. You want to do that 5 years earlier. You've said you've been very clear about the investment that Labour wants to make, but I don't think we have a number. So what is Labour planning to spend to invest in that energy sector to make sure that you can meet that target?
I've not seen the particular report, so forgive me, and I will obviously read it before the next time I come on your programme. But we have been clear. Rachel Reeves announced our plans a few weeks ago. We're not committed to the 28 billion, but we are committed to a programme of investment which we fund by extending the windfall tax, going further and getting rid of the loopholes which are still in the windfall tax and the gas and oil producers, which the Conservatives have not closed down. We are prepared to use that money to invest in renewable sources, and we're prepared to institute planning reform to link onshore wind and other renewable sources to the grid, where there is a backlog at the moment and they are not getting linked up. So we believe we can meet this target. And of course, we're going to, as I say, retrofit homes to make them warmer and more energy efficient. We believe all of that package will create good, well-paid jobs and cut energy bills for good.
What is that number, though? Because you're calling for an election in May. I assume that your policies will be costed because you're asking for this election to happen now, and you've promised that they will be costed by the next election. What is that number? What's the amount of money you're spending to meet this really, really ambitious and difficult target?
Well, every single penny piece of our spending, our investment programmes, will be itemised and will be published, and we will go into an election explaining where the money is coming from for every bit of our policy. The Conservatives won't even tell you how they won't tell you how they're going to fund the 46 billion.
But I'm asking you how you're going to fund your
pledges.
Hang on. Let's be fair. I'm asking you how you're going to fund your pledges, and you can't give me a number. So you're asking the same of the Conservatives, but you can't give me the same number here.
We published the number. We published the number. It was published a few weeks ago. I don't have the number at my fingertips. I apologise for that. But the premise of your question, that we haven't published a number, that it is secret, is actually wrong. We actually announced it about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I will go back, I'll get the report, the press release we put out, and I'll send it to you after the programme.
But a lot of listeners must be frustrated because just as you in the Labour Party were annoyed about the charges about spending 28 billion on green policies, and you made it clear where you stood. Similarly, you this morning are launching an attack on the suggestion that over a number of parliaments that the Conservative Party might want to replace national insurance. But, really that's an Aunt Sally, isn't it? I mean, it's not something they're going to put in their manifesto. It's not something they're planning on doing now. And anyway, they're not saying they're going to cut all that revenue from the budget, which is what you imply. So, both sides really are guilty in this election run-up of putting up a lot of false flares.
Well, I mean, I don't think it is an Aunt Sally, because it was Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak who stood up and said this is their plan to abolish national insurance. And their number 10 spin doctors have been briefing saying, oh, isn't this a clever dividing line that they've got? Well, if this is their plan, it is incumbent upon them to ask questions about it. How are they going to fund this? Is it through borrowing, with all the consequences that could mean for mortgages? Is it through cuts to public services like the NHS? What does it mean for the future of the state pension if you are severing the link between national insurance contributions and the state pension at the end of it? In fact, Silver Voices in the Daily Express yesterday were saying this could mean a means-tested state pension in the future. Or does it mean a new merged income tax and national insurance tax? If so, that means pensioners will be paying more in tax. I've calculated about £800 more for a pensioner who's on around £25,000.
No, I know. I mean,
so
I
these are
understand.
legitimate questions.
I understand all this, but since that remark was made by the Prime Minister, the Chancellor has absolutely clarified that this is a long-term aspiration, as with all your plans, within what the economy and the public realm can stand. So that's why I suggest.
Okay. Well, if it's a long-term aspiration, they still need to answer what is their long-term plan for funding the state pension. Because at the moment, you and me pay national insurance contributions and we build those up over 30 years and we get a state pension in retirement based on our national insurance contributions. If they're getting rid of national insurance, what is the basis of our state pension calculation in the future? How will that be calculated? How will that be funded? Whether you do that over a parliament or whatever, you still got to answer that fundamental question. Because or is their plan to sever the link and move away from a contribution-based pension system to one based purely on income tax, which, as Silver Voices, a campaign group, a charity for pensioners, was saying yesterday, could mean to the means testing of the pension in the future.
Okay.
Until the Conservatives answer that question, I think the state pension, as we know it, is at risk.
Jonathan Ashworth, thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's the Shadow Paymaster General there.
And lots of you are messaging in, letting us know your thoughts about that conversation we had with Mark Harper earlier about the NHS. Some of them good. Some people saying, like David, that I have a persistent chronic disease in the